Well, good morning, everyone. This is John Craig. So you this is a live broadcast, and you saw us sitting there before I could get the banner up. So anyway, thank you for waiting for us. This is Let Us Reason Together, and as I said, this is John Craig. I'm your second day of the week host for this broadcast here on the Messianic Lamb Radio, and joining me this morning, we've got Darryl Weinberg, all the way from the great northern country of Canada, and Mr. Mark David Smith. Good morning, gentlemen.
What's up?
Good morning.
How was your trip down here, Carol, or Darryl, or whatever your name is?
Trip down where?
Down here to the States.
I didn't go to the States.
Oh, you did?
I went to Niagara Falls.
Niagara Falls. That's in the States.
No.
So you didn't cross over?
We did not cross over. I am not in Ivrit this morning.
Well, I always think of you as Hebrew, so doesn't that mean crossover? So
yeah, it does, but not to where you are. That'll come.
That'll come.
I'll let you know when we're coming.
Well, that's pretty cool. Well, Niagara Falls, I was there as a child. And all I can remember is that as a child, I was probably like 3 years old. It was terrifying to me. Terrifying. Amazing, but terrifying. The sheer thunder and roar of that water going over those cliffs is just totally amazing. And I still remember it. And we went to the Canadian side to observe it. So what an amazing thing.
Darryl has no fear of anything. He is just a strong, powerful human on the planet and has no fear.
Oh, okay. So Darryl, you're out there kind of assessing it for that barrel roll?
No, those are for the congregants who don't behave.
Okay.
How did that meeting go, by the
way? We actually had a good meeting yesterday. It was a small turnout. I mean, a lot of people are traveling, trying to get in the last couple of weeks of summer. And so I just decided that we were going to have a relaxed atmosphere. I had a Q&A session yesterday. And I had mentioned that there's an Israel celebration that happens in the falls every year. And I can't remember who it is who puts this on, but it's a big what to do and, celebrate Israel. And they even light up the falls in blue and white. And so it's happening in a couple of weeks. And so we said that we were going to come down for that. And I said that, well, on that day, one of our community members, they're having a church service at their house because they're having a baptism in their hot tub. And so the whole church apparently that they go to is going to be gathering and they're going to have this service. And when I mentioned that and I said, we'll probably come down for that and then we'll go do the Israel thing. She's one of the women who's been there for, since the beginning. And she's been a believer for like 25 years. She says, well, I've never been baptized and I'd like to be. God is telling me it's time to get this done. I was like, wow, okay. So we arranged a baptism. Then a second guy says, well, I was only sprinkled when I was younger, so I'd like to get it done too. So all of a sudden, all these people are starting to pop up and saying we need to get baptized. So we're going to come alongside of the church that's doing it, and I'm going to do a couple of baptisms, and I'm going to tell them what baptism really is.
Hey, there you go. That's really awesome.
way? So what's wrong with being sprinkled?
Nothing if you're in a water park, but
all right. So a hot tub. So that's gonna be like 101 degrees.
Yeah, really.
All right.
Well,
so
I usually like it at 104, but
104. Okay.
Yeah, that's just me. But well, actually, the woman who said that she wanted to get it done, then she says, well, we've got a pool at our place. Maybe I'll talk to, the other woman. We'll get the whole service arranged at my place instead. You work it out between you. I'll just come down and I'll dunk whoever it is that we're dunking.
There you go. There you go. Well, for y'all that are listening right now, it is Monday, August the 26th, 2019. It is the 25th day of the 5th month. And in the Hebrew year 5779, we're about ready to start a new year on the Hebrew calendar. So kind of an interesting thing. We're pulling up to the fall feast season. I'm looking forward to that. And so this is based on Isaiah 118. Come now, let us reason together. It says, Yahweh, though your sins are as scarlet, they will be as white as snow. Though they are red like crimson, they will be like wool. So here on the Monday edition of Let Us Reason Together, it's where we sit down and reason out current events, cultural shifts, and of course this week's Torah portion. And we can either push back or push through. Nevertheless, if iron does not sharpen iron, sparks will never fly, let alone ever get a fire going. And so without a little heat and a good midrash, how will our hearts ever get soft and moldable enough to be transformed in the way that the Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, wants us to be, and maybe have a little fun along the way? I think we're going to have some fun this morning, gentlemen. And guys, you want to stay tuned, because on not only are we going to hit these things on the Torah portion, which this is I really like this Torah portion, by the way, but also the current event that I have today, everybody needs to know about. You need to hang in there and listen to us, because we're talking about something that can really affect us here, at least here in the United States. This type of thing, depending on how we go, I think it can affect the world, the whole world, because everybody looks to the United States to see what the people are doing. And so stay tuned for that. So what is about going on today? So here it is: weird and quirky celebrations today. Okay, so here's one: picking your poison day. This is picking your poison day. I don't know where that comes from. I was thinking about, where in the world does that ever get initiated? How you pick your poison? Well, I know there's like bad, it's like it's this bad thing or that bad thing, so pick your poison. But I don't know why. Pick your poison. All right. How about this? Being friendly with mother-in-law day. All right, guys. Do you have any issues with the mother-in-law? I don't. I get along well with my mother.
I'm taking the 5th on that one.
So, no, I love my mother-in-law. She's great. Like to have her around. Like having my parents around. If we could all live together, that would be awesome. How about this? Lavish wrap day. Lavish wrap day. I don't know what a lavish wrap is. That like seaweed, or those ointments, or like it's a cold day in August. I don't know. How about this? I'm not going to say this one. This one is it's a family show. I won't talk about that one. How about spinster day? Spinster day.
We pray for him.
Yeah. I self-censor at times, and this is one of those times. But if Sandi was here, I'd ask her. I'd say, should I do that one? But since she's not, I'd rather err on the side of conscience. But
there you go.
I will say side of conscience, or maybe on the side of being cautious. Okay. How about this one? National Toilet Paper Day. I just think everybody has to have a day to know that we celebrate toilet paper.
So is there a committee that comes up with these days?
A committee.
I'm sure Obama put one in there somewhere.
There's probably one in there somewhere, some dark corner of some bureaucracy. Someone came up with these national holidays.
So Darryl, do you have a tree in your front yard?
Yes.
John, you and I need to go up and commemorate Toilet Paper Day at Darryl's house.
Oh, yeah.
Front yard.
Oh, yeah. That's right. Hey, so we call that down here, we call it TP. We're going to TP a house. Do they call that? What do they call that in Canada? Do you ever get TP'd?
I don't know what we call it, because we tend not to focus on these things up here.
He is so pious. Darryl, it's so pious. It's unreal. We don't do that here at our
at least not in my house.
Why they call it TPing?
What?
You know why they call it TPing somebody?
Nope.
It's because it originated with the Indians.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave that alone.
Well, my wife actually had a kid in her daycare who did that. It was a Romanian kid. And so she went out to the park, and he went up to the tree in the park, dropped his pants, and away they went. And all the other kids said, "That's a great idea." So every time they went to the park, all the kids would gather around the trees, and they would water the lawn.
That's why we TP trees down here.
Yeah.
Just so you know, the way I understand it, Mark talks. I'm just going to set the record straight. TP is short for toilet paper. TP a house. Okay. So there you go. Okay. Oh, Mark, what are we going to do with you?
We did that. We did that to a buddy of mine on his wedding night years and years ago.
So you actually do that in Canada.
We did it to his car.
They do not do it in Norway. I think we were the first and last. When I say we, like a couple of friends, like 2 or 3 friends of ours and my sister, I think we were the first and last to TP a house in Norway. We did that. Yeah.
Oh, really?
They have trees in Norway.
I have a TP story too that is quite interesting. I actually have video. Dean and I were just watching this a couple of months ago. I have video of one of the very early Sukkots at Chandler with Lion Lamb Ministries, where I took the video for actually, I think 20-25 minutes of Brad Scott, his wife Carol, and a bunch of other, including camp security, TPing Bill Cloud's RV. And it wasn't only toilet paper, it was streamers and hanging stuff off the side of it and the whole thing. And while he was down doing some youth thing at the camp, and we're talking like at 11 o'clock at night, 10:30 to 11. And I have this video of Brad Scott and a whole bunch of the rest of us all, and we showed it the next night at Sukkot. Brad had no idea who did it, but had a pretty good idea. I mean, not Brad, Bill Cloud had a good idea, but anyway. Cute little story.
How funny. How funny. Okay. Well, here's some quotes for Monday, August 26th. Positive quote for the day from Henry David Thoreau. None are so old as those who have outlived enthusiasm. Well, guys, we're not there yet. All right. So we're not old, just so you know. How about this funny quote of the day from Frank Lloyd Wright? Tip the world over on its side and everything loose will land in Los Angeles.
Like a magnet.
Yeah. And if you look at Los Angeles today, my goodness, maybe I kind of agree with that. How about this love quote of the day from James Baldwin? Love does not begin and end the way we seem to think it does. Love is a battle. Love is a war. Love is a growing up. All right. Thanks, James Baldwin. Okay. How about verse of the day? I got this from the Brit Hadashah part of our Torah portion this week, and comes from John 6:45. So the reason why I pulled this verse out, when I read it, it's like, oh, this is good. It's really, it just kind of sobered me up to think about this. So think about this when I say this. John 6:45. This is Yeshua speaking. It is written in the prophets, and they shall be taught of God. Everyone who has heard and learned from the Father comes to me. Think about that. Everyone who has heard, they'll be taught of God. Everyone who has heard and learned from the Father comes to me. And so that's just kind of very interesting is that we come when we hear and we learn from the Father. We're directed to Yeshua. That's what happens. If we're learning from the true Elohim of the universe, we're directed to Yeshua. That's the only way I can see it. How about this? What happened on this day in history? So I got just a couple of different things. Only in the great state of Texas, just so you know this, is it recognized. Okay, Stan, wait for it. 1973, in the great state of Texas, at the University of Texas in Arlington, is the first accredited school to offer belly dancing. on this day in history. Just so you know, 1973 must have been a big deal. It made the list. How about this in 1996? Did you ever watch this show, The Seventh Heaven, where it starring Jessica Biel and some others? It made its debut today on this day in history on the WB. Did you ever watch that show? The Seventh Heaven was very interesting because it was a family that had this orientation about a family that was faithful at attending church. So you had these moral implications that are in there that were faced with moral dilemmas. And where you see the injection of the culture trying to change biblical values. It's very, very, very interesting. It started out where it drew you in, and then over the seasons, you could see how the culture changed the family. And I mean, it's typical. But
back in those days, there were a lot of shows that were like that, Sent from an Angel, or I don't know, all kinds of different shows that had. And now the shows that seem to be like that, instead of mentioning God or Jesus or whatever, it's the universe. Like there was a show on not long ago. Kevin probably saves the world, and there was an angel sent to watch this guy as he traveled around and went and did good. He could find people that were having trouble, and he did good. Matter of fact, I think it was just last year. It only was on one season and canceled, but it was an angel sent to him. So you're thinking, oh, it's a religious show. It's a Christian show. Well, he never referred to God. It was always the universe. This and the universe that. And, that's actually in a lot of movies and TV shows and stuff, even these days. But what's even more interesting to me is that I don't think there's a new movie or a new TV show or even TV shows that's been on for a while that are still going that doesn't have a gay person in it as one of the main characters. And real soon we'll probably have trans as one of the main characters.
And pedophilia is next on the list.
Oh yeah. Next on the list.
Well, there is a movie out right now. I don't even want to say the name, but there's a movie out right now that is about these sixth grade boys, and it's set in the stage, and it's horrible.
Well, if you haven't seen, and this is not a shameless plug at all, if you haven't seen the two newest HR5 updates, you need to go to Messianic Lamb Radio and click on HR5 and see the two new updates that are up. We have talked extensively about things like Drag Queen Story Hour. Where they have pictures and videos of 6-year-old boys laying across the drag queens laying on the floor and 6-year-old boys laying on top of them and their mother standing right there. And the whole thing, and the drag queens, these are not women. These are not even transvestites. These are not even men that have had surgeries. These are men.
Yes. Dressed up in my opinion, like a clown. They look really goofy.
Anyway, go check out the new updates.
All right.
Bye.
So here's one other thing about this day in history. Y'all remember this? In 2016, San Francisco 49ers Colin Kaepernick, whatever you want to call him, kneels in protest against the U.S. national anthem at San Diego's Qualcomm Stadium while playing against the San Diego Chargers, objecting to social or racial injustice and police brutality in the U.S. So get this, it's on this day in 2016. This was before the election of Donald Trump. So, but nevertheless, I think it was a great dishonor. It's my opinion that Colin Kaepernick did this. And I think it still continues today. I think since then, the NFL has lost tons of money, tons of fans, simply because all these people following suit, taking the knee during the national anthem. So, whose birthday is it today? Well, it's Mother Teresa's birthday. And so she was a Catholic missionary born in
Albania.
Yeah. Yeah. They actually made a mistake on this site on this day in history where they said born in Albania and then said Algeria later. But no, she was born in Albania and ended up in India. She became an Indian citizen and took care of a lot of people. Anyway, that's that. Let's move on. How about some things on the lighter side, jumpstart our brain before we get to the heavy stuff? All right. How about 10 things to know? This was 10 things to know. So let's let some wit for the day and twist our brains, some points to ponder. Number one, never under any circumstances take a sleeping pill and a laxative drug on the same night. Okay. All right. Just saying. Now, so whoever the author is probably experienced a messy morning. Let me just say. Okay, number two, don't worry about what people think. They don't do it very often. Okay, all right, that's good to know. All right, going to church doesn't make you a Christian any more than standing in a garage makes you a car. Have you heard that before?
No.
I've heard that.
Well, so somebody needs to prove that one, though. So we need proof on that.
Well, when I stand in the garage, I'm not a car. So I that's just my personal experience. That's my truth. I don't know what your truth is.
Oh, I stand in the garage and I stand there and go, so I think I'm a car, but you know.
Okay. How about number four? Artificial intelligence is no match for natural stupidity.
Amen.
So did you hear? I have since Sandy's not with me right now, I can say this because everybody knows that my wife's blonde. You know what happens when a blonde woman dyes her hair black or brunette?
What happens?
Yeah, what it's called?
Oh no! What?
Yeah, the artificial intelligence. Okay, I just lost half of our audience.
No, it's okay. We're all men here.
All right, so I make that joke. I'm just joking. Okay. All right. I mean, my wife would give me
about true brunettes, just ones that dye their hair.
Just those that are dyeing their hair.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, dyeing their hair, right? Artificial intelligence. So this would be what would happen. Sandy would go. I get that look.
all through John's shows now, he'll be going.
All right, number five. Okay, I'm just joking. I'm just playing around because I just had to say it. I did. I'm sorry if it offended you. Just forgive me. We're believers around here, right?
You know, Cindy's got her computer on watching the show. It doesn't make any difference if she's not in the room. You know, she's watching.
I'm trying to see her. I can't see her. All right, number five. If you must choose between two evils, pick the one you've never tried before. I feel like that.
Wonderful. Wonderful. That is such a inspiring statement. When you have to pick between two evils, pick the one you've never done before.
Yeah, like the last election.
Life's about experience. So. Wow, pretty awesome. Dude.
Do we feel like we're choosing between two evils during the elections, whenever those come around?
Here,
sometimes.
Let me ask the devil on this shoulder or the angel on this shoulder. So which one should I choose? What do you think? That's where I always make my decisions. If I don't know which evil to choose between two, I just ask either the angel or the devil on my shoulder.
How come you have a devil on your shoulder?
What?
Why do you have a devil on your shoulder?
Well, everybody does.
Oh, that's right. We were talking about in-laws earlier, right? Forgive me.
Oh,
All right, choose your poison here. Okay. Oh my goodness.
We're
Maybe
all
we should go
family
again. Okay, moving right along here. How about this? Number 6, my idea of housework is to sweep the room with a glance. Number 7, not one shred of evidence supports the notion that life is serious.
shred.
Oh, really?
No, yeah. Well,
It's perspective, dude.
Yeah.
It's all about perspective.
yeah, that's someone's truth. I hate that phrase. I'm just going to say it again. You know, I've heard it on the news. I hear people commentating, well, my truth is this. It doesn't matter what the facts are. Joe Biden said that.
They're really saying my perspective is.
They are, but you know, it's the changing of terms and using language. How about this? How about it's number 8? It's easier to get forgiveness than permission.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And
Now
number,
that's biblical truth for sure.
There you
Hezekiah 13:97. That's where that comes from.
I've read it there. I have. For every action, there is an equal and opposite government program.
Mm-hmm.
You know that in Canada, don't you? Darryl? We're learning that lesson here in the United States.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Did you ever think about this? You know how the Federal Reserve down here prints money?
Mm-hmm.
They print money to pay the bills and all that sort of stuff. So why do we pay taxes?
You want an answer to that? Is that rhetorical? Because we'll just, forget the rest of the show then.
Money is printed like on printing presses?
Yes.
I was always told it grew on trees.
Well, nope.
Yeah.
Wow.
That tree I had up front in my yard,
Yeah.
it was a money tree.
Oh,
It was not a teepee tree.
No, but it died.
Okay. Start producing. Oh no.
I love it.
And then if you look like your passport picture, you probably need the trip.
That's a good one.
Amen.
All right. So it's time for the Torah portion this morning. So let's regroup. Let's come back around to it. Let's keep it to 15 minutes here. And Darryl, it's yours.
The Torah portion this morning is from the passage that I've chosen anyway to look at is from Deuteronomy chapter 12. And it's regarding the commandments of the sanctuary. So the first thing that God says, and he repeats this quite often. I love Deuteronomy chapter 12. And he says that we are to, when they go into the land, so this is, of course, they're getting ready to go into Canaan. And God says that when I bring you into the land, you make sure that you clean house, and not just with not sweep it, not just with a glance either. You shall utterly displace all the places where the nations whom you dispossess serve their gods. On the high mountains, on the hills, and under every green tree, you shall tear down their altars, smash their sacred pillars, burn their asherim with fire, and you shall cut down the engraved images of their gods and obliterate their name from that place. Then he says, you shall not act like this toward the Lord your God, but you shall seek the Lord at the place which the Lord your God will choose from all your tribes. And the whole chapter is about this, and he really goes into something a lot deeper at the end of this chapter. But what he's saying here is that as we go into conquer land, our task of God is, whether it was Israel or whether it's us today, is that we are to be conquering territory. Again, Yeshua says the gates of hell will not prevail. We're supposed to be on the offense. We are supposed to be moving forward, putting on the full armor of God, and we are supposed to be conquering. This idea within the church now is that we go on retreats. I don't go on a retreat. If we're taking a rest, then I'm going on an advance. I'm going on a time where I can recoup my strength, recharge my batteries, but I'm not retreating. I'm not going backwards. The only time you retreat is when the enemy is overwhelming you. And we just, this past week, there were a couple of massive breakthroughs that were happening in our community. We had one guy who's been in bondage for basically his entire life. And his marriage has been a train wreck for 35 years. They've kind of gone through the motions, and he's never done any movement. And so we've had some serious talks. And the Lord woke me up in the middle of the night a few days ago to pray for this guy. And that day, apparently, he had an incredibly powerful breakthrough, and their lives are transforming now. We're not on the retreat. We're always on the advance. And so we as believers, both physically, Israel, and then spiritually for us, we go into conquer territory. But when we go into conquer territory, the big mistake that Israel made is that they didn't clean house. They didn't completely get rid of all the chametz. They didn't get rid of all the leaven. They didn't get rid of all the stuff. But God warns them. He says, you're going to see all these altars. And we see this with Amaziah, the king, later on of Judah, that he goes and conquers the Edomites, and then he goes and brings back their gods who he just conquered. I mean, it's a bizarre situation. When we go into spiritual territory, we don't adopt their practices. We don't, in verse 29, he says, don't look at the ways that they worshiped their gods and then come and do that with me. He says, again, you shall not do that to the Lord your God. But you shall burn their altars and their idols with fire. You shall utterly devastate them, because God's got a place where he wants you to worship. And like Yeshua was telling the Samaritan woman at the well, that, God wants those who worship him in spirit and in truth. And it's not your truth, my truth. It's God's truth, because he is the truth, the way, the truth, and the life. So what I love about this passage is that when we go into territory, when we go into a new culture, for instance, as missionaries, as apostles, as going into a place to evangelize an area, we don't compromise. We don't look at their practices and say, well, we really like that. How do we think the Christmas tree got into our culture? Saint Boniface, who was an 8th century German monk, into the houses, and he says, well, we should worship our God like that. And these were idols to the Druids. So although Christians may not worship the Christmas tree, the practice was borrowed from people who did worship the tree. And Jeremiah 10 specifically prohibits that. We've got to be careful about not only where we worship God, but how we worship God. And God is very particular about those things. And so this idea within Christianity today that God will sanctify anything is completely unfounded within Scripture. For me, God wants purity. He wants holiness. And God has been very particular, very meticulous about laying out how we ought to worship him. We have the Moedim, we have the feast days. He told us how we are to do it, where we're to do it, when we're supposed to do it. There's no question about this. When we go to God and we start telling him, well, we're not going to do that, but we're going to do it this way, we compromise. We allow the enemy to get in there. And what happened to Israel when they didn't take down the high places, when they didn't smash the altars? They ended up adopting not only the places to worship God, but eventually it turned it into the worship of other gods. So when Christians start practicing things like yoga, and I was at a conference a couple years ago, and the wife of the leader of the denomination looked at everybody in the room, a bunch of pastors, and says, I do yoga, deal with it. I mean, that's rebellion. That's a Jezebel spirit. That's shaking your fist at God and saying, I'm not going to do what you said to do because, well, I feel like it. But when we do that, we weaken our worship. We weaken our devotion to God. We weaken our spiritual man, and then we become ineffective. And then we find that we do have to retreat because we no longer have power to fight anymore. The armor of God isn't fully attached. And doing it God's way is so very important. So I love Deuteronomy 12. I think it's a powerful, powerful chapter. And we got to be really careful about what we're absorbing in the culture around us. It's so easy nowadays, as we've been absolutely bombarded by these messages, like we talked about. Mark, you were saying about every character on TV, every show on TV now has at least one gay person. And, where it's headed next very quickly is truly frightening. We can't even begin to, envision us adopting any of that, saying it's okay. All these churches that are now having the rainbow triangle out front and stuff like that, that's inviting judgment. And we can't do that. We got to go back to doing it God's way and only God's way. And so when he says clean house, you clean house. You go through every nook and cranny. We need to look through our houses and make sure that there's no carved images and things like that may have been used in worship. I remember a friend of mine who lived down in Mexico when I lived there, and she used to travel all over the world. She had a whole room in her house down there that had masks from Africa, and some of they were all really demonic looking. Well, you can imagine what they must have been used for and what they were inviting into their house or her house. So we got to make sure we clean our houses, and even if they're tokens of trips we took and stuff like that, unless they are purified and if we know that they're involved in anything ritualistic, they got to go.
Yeah,
even stuff that's benign. Like trinkets and stuff like that. We need to be praying over them to make sure that the enemy doesn't have anything attached to them.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I was just thinking about a couple of different things. I remember as a child, I must have been at that point in time, maybe four years old. And we lived up in Minneapolis, and we had we were invited over to my dad's boss's house. And so we were there, and they had a bunch of those African masks on the wall that was on the stairway going down to the basement. As a child, it freaked me out. I'm telling you, I would not go down into the basement because I had to pass those masks. There was something that was connected to them that it just completely frightened me as a child. All I can say is that there must have been something to me, as in our innocence as a child, we don't have a lot of these barriers and walls that are up, and we can sense things. And I think that's what was going on. The other thing is you're talking about this, even to the point of going to the grocery store, do you ever check your meat? And the reason I say that is we've started checking our meat. We've been checking other things because if it's halal, that means it has gone through the process of being blessed by a Muslim. It's the same thing where that meat has been offered up to idols. Yeah. Sandi and I will not buy that meat.
I think Paul gives us the authority to overcome that. So if we know it's been blessed to something else, because Paul says, if you go into the marketplace, don't ask where the meat came from. And so when he says in Timothy that you pray over anything that you pray over will be blessed, we can revoke the curse. But if you don't, then you're inviting it into your house.
So well, the stance that we're taking on it from our point of view is we're looking at it as if we do it and it's unaware, then that's one thing. If we know that it is, then we've got a responsibility to go. We'll just shop elsewhere. That's what we do. We'll just buy, if they've got two different brands of meat up there, then we're going to go to the other. We're going
you don't want to go to another store either.
What was that?
You don't want to support that industry either.
That's what I was just going to say. That's right.
Yeah. So, there are some really good points. Mark, what are you thinking about this?
Well, a couple of different things. You had mentioned the guy that walked in on the meeting and says, I do yoga, deal with it. One of the things we should always remember when I hear stuff like that is the guy that stole some booty when they what was it? They walked around Jericho or something, and they weren't supposed to steal anything. Or when they attacked Jericho, and the guy came back, one person came back, and the entire camp was cursed because
36 people died in the Battle of Ai.
Yeah, that's right. That's the Battle of Ai. That artificial intelligence.
I'm sorry, I'm kidding. I get those mixed. That's why I don't ever do Haftorah, because I get them all mixed up. But actually I had it in my notes about food sacrificed to idols. I was going to bring that up too. On last week's the next chapter show on Thursday, we talked about the difference between Christianity and Messianic, and that those two different lifestyles. And one of the things that tomorrow, as a matter of fact, I have a lunch meeting with the pastor of the new church I've been going to. And I'm taking him out to lunch, mostly so we can sit back and get to know each other and that type of thing. And so when you're talking about like Christians, and what they do and how they've compromised, I think you find it within the Messianic lifestyle, Judaism lifestyle. The three of us serve the same God, but we still have that compromise that is with us. One of the huge, what I was saying is about going to this meeting tomorrow is for the past couple of weeks since I've known I have this lunch that I'm going to, my brain is going through all the different things that he may ask me, or what do I need to talk to him about so that he understands our lifestyle compared to the Christian lifestyle, because that's going to be a main course of the topic. And one of the things that is different to me is perspective. In other words, if you dominantly take just the Brit Hadashah and constantly learn from it, that's going to be your perspective. But if you take the whole Bible as a whole, and that it is all viable for today, and not that the law has been done away with, that's a different perspective. And one of the reasons that I decided to leave the Christian lifestyle and do the Messianic lifestyle is that I'm a Berean. I still remember in church when the pastor said that there were 4 Greek words for the one word we use, love. There's 4 different Greek definitions. You can use 4 different Greek words when you're talking about love. I still remember how that was just, it was like a whole new world opened up to me. And I knew that I could now go and find out more. I didn't have to just read the King James and learn from there, or what the pastor told me. I just had to take it. I can now go out and study it for myself, and I can make decisions for myself on what I believe and what I know. But it's because of what I'm learning for myself, I now have that perspective. And if we take just a portion of God's word and live our lives according to that section of the Bible, then our perspective is not a whole perspective, and we open ourselves up to exactly what you're talking about, Darryl, in a compromise. Because now we aren't, let's just take Christianity for an example, and just say that you only look at the New Testament, then you're not really understanding even where Yeshua, who was a Jew that knew Torah and lived a Torah lifestyle, that's the only perspective he had. And now you're reading the New Testament and not getting the perspective of Yeshua. What would Jesus do? He would do Torah. I got to go here because I got to change that because I keep going off screen and those little ones. So I'm sorry, but I had to change that. So you get what I'm saying is that to me, that's how the compromise comes, is by not taking the whole word of God as viable and valuable for our lives today. And to me, that's the Messianic lifestyle. Now, only one other quick thing. I have only missed 2 services since I started going to this new church. Since the middle of July, I've only missed 2 services. I go to every time they're open, even when they have special little deals. that when the pastor teaches, he is not one time, or every time, let's not go to the negative, every single sermon he's ever taught is out of the Old Testament, and how he applies that to our lives today. And I'm
cool.
so impressed by the Spirit of God that's within this church. Is the only reason I'm still going, and the reason why I want to meet with this pastor and see if there's a way that maybe I can, come in and influence, or, help them understand the difference. Hey, we all know entire churches have changed their format from Christianity to the Messianic lifestyle. Every one of us have heard loads of stories about this. So, hey, you never know. This is a mega church too, but he's a great guy. And anyway, so for what Darryl's teaching there, I think that's it. I think it's our perspective that we learn from is what causes us to either serve God to the fullest of his word or compromise. There you go.
All right. Mark, I'm going to let that be the last word on this as we move into the next segment. Just really good perspective. We just got to realize, and I said this earlier, it's who do we serve? And, that's where that Torah portion comes out, is that who do we serve? And when we look at it and we keep Yeshua in the middle of it, maybe they don't understand the Messianic lifestyle, but they're still brothers because they serve Yeshua. And then on the other side of it, we got to make sure, if we're in the Messianic lifestyle, how many people got off track and they left Yeshua, and it's just so important. We don't want to trade one thing for another. It's about keeping him focused and then being a light where we're at. And I just love that. Mark, I love what you're doing and having that opportunity to be a light even there. And,
well, there's a song out there. Can't remember who does it. It's called "You Gotta Serve Somebody." It may be the devil, it may be the Lord, but you gotta serve somebody.
That's true. That's really true.
Does that? Who is that?
Well, okay. So this is something I hope everybody's still paying attention. If you haven't been paying attention about what I said earlier, this is the current event element that we may want to even just clip this out for a later deal if we can knock it out of the park. With that said, I was reading, I was kind of going through some things, trying to look at some current event that I could bring to the table today. And I am bringing to the table HR 838, which is called the TAPS Act. The TAPS Act, which is short for Threat Assessment, Prevention, and Safety Act of 2019. And this is House Resolution 838. It's been put on the table by Representative Brian Babin of Texas. So he's a Republican representative, put this on the table. This is not good. That's all I can say. In my opinion, this is not a good thing. And because we're being lied to about this. What is it? Right now, it's been referred to Subcommittee on Crime, Terrorism, and Homeland Security as of March 25th. So it's still in committee. We need to make sure that we are contacting our congressmen and our senators that we do not want this. I mean, they gave us the NDAA, which has taken a lot of freedoms from us, the Patriot Act, which has affected our own liberties within the United States. Well, this is going to take it to another level with HR 838, the TAPS Act. On this article from, let's see, this is from the libertybeacon.com, libertybeacon.com. And it was contributed by Chris Ann Hall, who is an attorney. And it says this, that the test of the TAPS Act is not the solution to gun violence. Many members of Congress are professing it to be. The unlimited and arbitrary authority of this act bestows upon a bureaucracy of 24 people combined with the language of doublespeak and contradictions, creating loopholes, allowing completely unsupervised and unchecked authority, is reminiscent of the Sedition Act of 1798. So here's a summary. The TAPS Act will create a brand new bureaucracy under the authority of the Department of Homeland Security. A non-elected bureaucrat is authorized by Congress to appoint 23 other non-elected bureaucrats to invent the authority for federal and state government agents to identify individuals who are exhibiting patterns of concerning behavior, and then to manage those Americans. The sole purpose of this bureaucracy of 24 will be to create state and federal policy or policing bodies ruling over the perceived behavior of the American people. KGB-style agencies not only monitoring the behavior of Americans, but also functioning as judge, jury, and executioner. So what they're going to do is, what it's proposing to do is have this bureaucracy come up with a way where they can figure out who is a good individual and who's an individual who is exhibiting patterns of concerning behavior. What is that? Well, the act does not define what concerning behavior is. Of course, part of it is that we had these recent shootings in El Paso and up in Dayton, Ohio, where we've had other shootings down in Florida and going all the way back to Columbine, where you have concerning individuals who have these patterns of behaviors, and they want to predict what they might do and stop it before it's happening. Kind of like Minority Report, pre-crime bureaucracy where there is no oversight. It is just bureaucratic. So depending on who's in there, it could be some people in there that are people who have a very progressive leaning, and that I'm using that term progressive leaning because those are going to be like the Barack Obama types who want to take our individual liberties and say, look, someone said that there's a problem that you may have this behavior about you like to shoot guns. Well, that's scaring your neighbors. So we're going to look into this. And then they bring you up on these charges where there is no jury, there's no judge. They just simply label you and then begin to take away your freedoms. It's actually will go against the First, the Second, the Fourth, the Fifth, Sixth, Seventh, Eighth, Ninth, and 10th Amendments without due process. Of course, the Fourth Amendment is the biggie here, where they come in and they judge you without due process, where you don't have without a warrant. Then they come in and they can arrest you, they can put you away, they can go through your house, they can do all sorts of different things. Let's go on. Once a federal or state agent has identified an American believed to be interested in some kind of concerning behavior, Section 3, 2B authorizes the bureaucracy to empower these agents to investigate and gather information from multiple sources. Sources remain undefined in this act. On this, individual American to find articulable facts. Okay, not evidence, but articulable facts supporting whether this person is truly exhibiting an interest in committing concerning behavior. The Fourth Amendment requires government to obtain a warrant based upon probable cause, not articulable facts, supported by oath or affirmation, particularly describing the places to be searched and the person or things to be seized. Under the Fourth Amendment, it is impossible for this task force to empower any government agent to do what Congress has authorized it to do. But the act makes no mention of the Fourth Amendment or the government's requirement to respect and secure the rights of the people. So in the same, according to this section, after the agent has complied with its articulable facts, in other words, someone just brings up a complaint. Well, their complaint, it now becomes a fact just because they said it. By circumventing the Fourth Amendment's requirement on government, the bureaucracy will empower the government agent to manage the threat of the concerning behavior. There is no definition within the act for the word manage. However, the powers of the task force are defined as follows. Any member of the task force may, if authorized by the task force, take any action which the task force is authorized to take by the section. So while there's no guidelines created by Congress on how this bureaucracy is supposed to define, manage, or identify the behaviors of the Americans of the Act. The Act establishes that the task force will create its own guidelines and best practices in order to devise a national standard of action. Therefore, it seems indisputable through sections 2 and 4 that any member of the task force can create any power for the agents to take any action it chooses to, as long as the task force will establish the guideline to practice such. Okay, let me just boil it down. Basically, it comes down to this. The only oversight is they got to this task force has to report once a year what they're doing. The other thing is here's the issue. Your kid is at school. Your kid may say, "Oh, Dad's got a handgun that he goes to the firing range," and the teacher can say, "Well, how do you feel about that?" "Well, that gun kind of scares me." Well, now that teacher can now report the parent to the bureaucracy. The bureaucracy says, "Oh, this could be an issue, especially if you're living in a blue city, a blue state, where you have all sorts of liberals that hate guns." Will come and say, "You've got a household that is dangerous to this child. We're going to come in, and we're going to put you through an interrogation, psychological review, and we're going to take your guns." Because you're a concern, you have concerning behavior because you have a handgun or you have an AR-15 or something like that, and the kid can be taken away. By the way, yeah. So this will standardize and provide a behavioral threat assessment and management process across the federal government. It will provide states the training, resources, and support needed to stand up community-based multidisciplinary behavioral threat assessment and management units, recognizes the behavioral threat assessment and management processes must become part of the culture and fabric of contemporary law enforcement. In other words, pre-crime will become part of the fabric of contemporary law enforcement. And it urges that this matter of national security, it's urgent that we address this matter of national security. If we act now and work together, we can save lives. So recently, there was something that happened where a man, and this is using the red flag laws. This is taking those red flag laws and taking it to the next level, essentially. And a man was brought up, and so law enforcement came to confiscate his firearms. And so he gets this knock on the door. He doesn't know who it is. So they've got the SWAT team that came, and he opens his door, and he's defending his home because he doesn't know who it is, and he gets shot and killed. Another one is, and this is from Dana Loesch from her tweet about how red flag laws at work just last week. A man had his firearms confiscated simply because he had the same name as a criminal, had to bear the full legal cost a month later to defend himself in court. He had to go to court to say, "I'm not that guy." And so these are some things that red flag laws are already showing us. We're taking this new law, HR 838, if it passes, and if President Trump were to sign it into law, it takes the red flag laws to a new level, puts it on steroids, essentially. So that's it. What are y'all thinking about that? Have you, Darryl? I mean, you're living up there in Canada. You've walked through these things where guns, you don't have the freedom of owning a gun like we do here in the United States. What do you think about this? You may want to unmute.
Yeah. Well, it's it's thought control, and they're putting things in place for us so that we can be taken out and removed on a whim. I did an article a couple months ago on the 7 Noahide laws, and for those who don't know, the 7 laws of Noah are a Talmudic concept that Jews need to keep Torah. Gentiles, in order to be righteous with God, need to keep these 7 laws of Noah. They're not biblical. They're rabbinical. And most people don't know, but George Bush Sr. invoked these things into law back in 1991. So instead of the United States having as its foundation the 10 Commandments, now you've got the 7 laws of Noah. And what the 7 laws of Noah do is they say that for violating any of these, now 5 of them are sort of associated with the 10 Commandments, except how they define them is completely different, like the laws of blasphemy. According to, of course, the rabbis, if you proclaim Yeshua as God, then you're committing blasphemy. The punishment for violating any of the 7 Noahide laws is death. It's a death penalty. But the means for the death penalty is decapitation. And this has already been put into place for the United States. So we're moving quickly toward that. But the biggest thing is that the 7th of the laws is to set up courts of justice. Within those courts of justice, you only need one witness, one judge.
Which is not biblical.
No, it's not biblical because
you need 2 or 3 witnesses. But
by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses shall a matter be established. You need at least 2 witnesses, not according to the 7 Noahide laws. And so if you have someone who comes and makes an accusation against you, I mean, it's the same thing that Jezebel did. Now, Jezebel went and got 2 witnesses when, she wanted to get Naboth's vineyard for Ahab. So she put a conspiracy together and had 2 witnesses say and make an accusation against him, and then they took him out and stoned him. With the 7 Noahide laws, you don't even need 2 witnesses. All you do is need one witness who can lie. You get one sympathetic judge, and off you go, and then you get your head lopped off. So when we look in the book of Revelation in chapter 19, where it says that all those who lost their head for the sake of the gospel, it's not only going to be the Muslims, it's going to be the Orthodox Jews that are going to be committing this kind of stuff in the tribulation period. Most people don't know this stuff. So what we're getting toward with all these laws, and the specifics of the law doesn't really matter. We can so get bogged down in the details, HR 5, this, that, and the other thing. It's all for the same purpose. It's to move us to the point where we become the enemies of the state. They're making it easier and easier and easier to round us up and to get rid of us without it being a bother. See, before, if, 20, 30 years ago, in order to get someone falsely accused of something, you really had to work at it. Now, it's not a big deal. We just keep wearing away the fabric of the Constitution, or here in Canada with the, we've got our own Constitution, of course, with the Bill of Rights. And, as long as the state gets more and more power, it becomes easier and easier to do what it wants with the people. Because when you have a totalitarian state, then in ancient Rome, when they transitioned from a republic to an empire, and Julius Caesar was really the first one who kind of put this into place, and he was executed for it. But by the time you get to Augustus, he was a benevolent leader. He was actually a very good leader. He knew when to use the hammer and when it didn't. But then when you get a weak leader that comes in with all this power, he's going to go crazy. And so we saw that over and over, where you had Caligula, who was, moonbat crazy, and then Nero, the same thing. These guys were killing people left, right, and center. And it's the same thing, in modern day. If you look at people like Joseph Stalin, if you look the wrong way, Stalin had you executed. That's where we're heading with all of this. And so we just need to realize that things are moving very, very rapidly in the United States, especially in order to bring in the communist agenda so that they can get rid of us as quickly as possible. And we're going to be number 1A on the list to remove, because we stand for truth and they can't have truth.
And that, that's exactly right. Because if you go back in one of the articles that I read when I was reading up on this, was talking about, in case it says this, in case you're wondering who'll get on this list, to start, check out the new definition of a domestic terrorist. And so if you go back to the FBI, actually has a publication who domestic terrorists are, and you can always go all the way back to the Obama administration, and you can say anybody that's pro-life is a domestic terrorist. Anybody that has conservative values can be that way. If you own a gun and you go to a gun range regularly, you can be considered a domestic terrorist. There's a lot of different definitions that they've really broadened it up. I can just throw anybody under the bus with this one, and where we can really lose our rights with. So, Mark, what are your thoughts?
So if they come to my door, this is how I would react.
I could have killed you. Been telling you the law. Out here, it's me. Don't push it. Don't push it. I'll give you a war you won't believe.
And
go ahead. Make my day.
and so go ahead, come to my door. I'm ready for you. There you go. There you go.
We got the big guns there.
There you go. In other words, I'm ready for you. Come on.
There you go.
Let's do it.
Tova says, "Pry from my cold dead fingers."
That's right. That's right. No, I'm with y'all. I got nothing to really add to any of that at all. It's just just be ready to defend yourself and do what you get. You want a war? I'll give you a war. You go ahead and make my day. Come on, let's do it.
So apparently what they're going to do is they're going to take this committee. There'll be one in Washington bureaucrat, and then these 23 others, and then it's going to just whittle down. So this down to the states, to the counties, to the cities, and everybody's going to have somebody responsible. And then they're going to pull in some psychologists, probably some teachers, different people like that will contribute to the list. And that's what's very scary is like, who are these people? It might be okay, if you have certain trustworthy people, but honestly, we can't trust anybody. We cannot trust government we cannot trust government at all. And so when I say it might be okay, actually, it's just never okay. It's never okay. It's a violation of basically our entire Bill of Rights, which is the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. But I wanted to bring this up. Just want everybody to be aware of this. Make sure you let your congressman know there is quite a popularity, bipartisan popularity, Democrats and Republicans that are wanting this. It's got to go through the Senate, and the Senate is kind of precarious because everybody, when we have all these shootings, it's about shifting the focus, shifting that Overton window to where we think, well, maybe we need more controls. No, if they keep throwing stuff at us with kind of controlled actions, it is meant to change our mindset to where we would be more accepting of this. And the Patriot Act is something that's happened in the past. It changed our mindset with 9/11 to give up some of our freedoms for security. And now we have to take our shoes off at the airports just to go through the metal detector. I mean, give me a break. These are just things that's just going down a slippery slope. That slope's getting slicker along the way. That's all I have to say about that. Let's jump on to the next segment as we wrap it up today. And Mark, you've got the Brit Hadashah.
We're good, brother. We're tight on time, and I need to go.
Okay.
At 11 anyway. I've got somebody coming over, so we'll do it next week.
Okay.
You want to know what the Brit Hadashah is? Just go over there and find it and read it. There you go.
There you go. All right. Well, that's good. Well, some interesting things. Great discussion here with the Torah portion and with and just thinking about these things that we got to be involved with. I like to bring these things up because if we don't bring it up, who's going to bring it up? And I mean, I didn't know about it until I read this article, and then I started doing some more research on it. And that's the same thing with that House Bill 5, Mark. If it just hadn't come across my feed or come across my path, how many of us just wouldn't have known about it? And these things are there to take away our freedoms.
I totally agree. And so many people already don't know about it. And that's what's vital. It's just unreal to me. It's got to get the word out. You got to share those videos. You got to share that information, even if you just know a little about it.
Yes. Yes, that's right. Well, with that being said, share this broadcast. Get this one out, put it on your social media, put it in and put the link in your email and send it out to all of your friends. Say, hey, take a look at this. Of course, if you're watching it on YouTube, you can always speed it up. If you say, I don't have time to go through this broadcast, well, speed it up. Go to 1.5. Sometimes I go two times the speed.
You on that. I now have what's called the show segments page on the website, messianiclambradio.com. And you can go to the show segments page, and like last week and the week before on this show, I took segments out, and I'm always taking like the last one you just did on the news, and that will be on Four Corners News. So as a Four Corners News report. And so different segments that we're doing, like the HR5, my last two updates have been on the next chapter. And so I just take the segments out. I put them on that page. It's vital you check the messianiclambradio.com. We're not changing it. We're adding stuff. I even now have producer pages and show pages and the whole thing where you can go and find out about the producers and the co-host and host and all that stuff. So go check it out, man. A lot of new good stuff on there.
Yeah. Hey, that's good. And you know, that's the next chapter from last week. I'm telling you, really, really good show.
There are 3 segments taken out of that. Sandi's ozone health deal. What's the difference between Christians and Messianics, and the HR5 update. 3 different segments of this. So,
woo, good stuff. Good stuff. Well, this brings us to the end of this show today here at Let Us Reason Together. I appreciate everybody joining us. Yeah, definitely give us a thumbs up, share it on your social media, get the word out. We want to be an informed community because we need to be a responsible community and not just bury our heads in the sand and just think that, oh, it's just a sign of Yeshua coming. No, it's a sign that we need to say, I'm still gonna look out for my granddaughter's generation in this case, so that she can have the same freedoms that we've had and even reverse it to where she'll have more freedoms than what we've had. These are things we need to know. Well, you want to stay tuned here on the Lamb Network. Just like Mark said, lots of stuff going on. We'll be back next week with more of Let Us Reason Together and Yahweh willing. So on behalf of the network, on behalf of Let Us Reason Together, this is John Craig. Thank you, Darryl. Thank you, Mark, for joining me today. Great show. We will see you all next week.